Hi, good morning. This is Nate Teske, and welcome to Sales Stories with Nate Teske and Rob Sullivan. We have a very good guest today with us, and we'll be talking to him about his background in primarily medical sales. We'll introduce him here in a moment. But collectively, Rob and I have over 70 years of sales experience in the technology space and in the training space. So that's our background. And I'd like to introduce to you today Art Erickson. Art?
Hey, great to see you guys. Thanks for having me on, Nate and Rob. I'm looking forward to a great conversation today. I am Art Erickson. I'm Vice President of Sales currently at a medical healthcare company. Been in healthcare sales for over 33 years, from both an individual contributor role all the way up to a leadership role, and looking forward to sharing a little bit today about my plight from coming out of college all the way to my career today.
Right on. Right on, Art. Yeah, and Art, as we start the discussion today, what Rob and I like to do is ask you, from your career, your 33 years history in sales, what's your favorite sales story, and also what's your maybe a story that you lost an opportunity and what you learned from it. Those are kind of the two things we like to ask our guests. But just curious, like when you're on your deathbed, you're gonna remember, wow, I remember that deal that I did, right?
Yeah, there are actually a couple that come to mind from a win standpoint. There's a few that come right to my top of mind right now from a loss standpoint because
We all
being
have.
being a professional salesperson, as you guys know, you lose a lot more than you win in some cases over your career. So you have to take the good with the bad. And for the ones that really stand out in my mind, there are two in particular I can talk a little bit about and share some insight. One, when I was a young buck, I would say probably doing it for about 8 years, and worked with this facility for a while on the south suburbs of Chicago, and worked with the head guy, always delivered what he needed. Not only was I the rep, but I was always so taking care of them on the side, more doing some account director duties with them. And anytime he would call, even on a weekend, I would get back to him and he'd say, "Oh, thanks, Art." So I built that rapport over time with the leadership group. And finally, one day they said, "Listen, we're not going to buy hardware and software anymore. We're going to outsource our whole department of transcriptionists, and we're going to go with a transcription company instead. So you won't require hardware and software anymore." And I said, "You know what? That's interesting. I do have a partner I work with right now that is in the Chicago area that knows the spellings of all the street names, which are very important, and knows our culture." And he's like, "Well, I'd like to have a talk with him." Got the customer to come with me. We met with them. And basically, my customer at the time said, "Well, we're looking at this very large nationwide company, and they're going to be able to provide this for us for X." And I'm sitting in my chair, both customers. I've worked with both of them. And my customer that I brought into the large meeting said, "Well, what would it take for us to be able to work with you guys?" And he said, "Is there any way you could hire Art?" And I wasn't really looking for a career change, but yeah, is that a deal maker or breaker? What's happening here? And so he's like, "Well, I would love if Art was our account manager, and if our account sold it again. All the doctors know him, all the nurses know him. They know what he brings to the table. We know that he's honest, he's upfront, he'll give us the best deal possible." So he's like, "I will definitely, if you're able to get Art, I definitely can help you move this forward." So I was dating my girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife, and her mother was a transcriptionist in the department. So the customer walked me outside, made me a salary offer with a company car, all the good stuff early in the early 2000 area, right? And I'm like, "Wow, that's making more than I'm making now. Plus I have a car, plus I have a phone, plus I have my own office. I'm running sales." Called my company and gave my 2 weeks notice, which you should always do as a common courtesy. Don't just walk out. Never want to burn a bridge, everybody. Make sure you give them that notice. You phrase everything over to the next person, train them, show them. It's a part of sales. You have to do that because you never know about down the road who you may run into. So we won the deal. So it was about a $1.4 million deal a year for 5 years. So it was about 7 million. And great experience. The only thing I'll tell you is this. It may have been the hardest Christmas I ever had because at Christmas, I outsourced my mother-in-law's job. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I expected a lump of coal in my for my gift. But we did hire her on our company and she's just, been to that day. But it was kind of an awkward moment there when you find out you won and your girlfriend's mom at the time loses her job because you outsourced it. But I kept that job 5 years. I had that company rolling and I was at a big another like IT conference, as you guys know how those are. A company knows that I started this. It was a unique situation where the doctors would have a Palm Pilot. They would hit a button. This is back in wireless infancy stages. And all their schedule would come down. They would hit a button. They would speak on the patient's name and all their chart number and say the patient's 34-year male presented in the facility. And then hit another button and it would wirelessly send that voice file over to a transcriptionist who had a headset on and a foot pedal, and they would type it and they would put in their EMR. Well, I helped create that system with the company. I was at another show. My company at the time, they weren't treating everybody right. They were dropping salaries. They were privately owned. So this big company approached me at the show and said, "Aren't you the guy that started this?" I go, "Yeah." He's like, "We want you to help run our company." And they were in the Midwest. And I said, "Well, let's talk about salary first." And he gave me a salary number. And I'm like, "Okay, that's a lot more than I'm making right now. What about this? What about that? What about commission? What about bonus? What about, equity in the company?" He gave it to me. So I then took the company that was 1.25 million and they weren't happy with my old company and they followed me to another company. So, and I incorporated the exact same thing. We ripped everything out at 1 o'clock in the morning. So the old company didn't know it, installed everything. So when the doctors came in the morning, they didn't know anything changed except for the people on the back end doing the work. So it was seamless. So I had that deal for another 4 years. So what the moral of this story is, you're honest and upfront with a customer. And remember, I was probably $1,000 deal total for those folks. Now, probably about a $10 or $11 million it turned into over all that time working for two different companies and delivering when I said I was going to deliver and how I delivered. So it's always been a good experience for me to keep that contact. We're all connecting with people, right? People buy from people who they like and they trust. So having that trust built up for 5 years, then another 5 years, and then another 4 years, 14 years, I worked with that single customer. They were a reference site. They were everything that I needed to be able to be successful selling other large healthcare institutions, because they would say, "Who's a reference?" And I know right off the top of my head, I could throw their name out and they'd say, "Oh, you work with them?" "Yes, I do. I have a person's name and maybe you guys would like to go to lunch." And this is back before Zoom, so I'm dating myself, right? "Maybe you could go before lunch and we'll have lunch." And so they would talk and I would leave. I'd say, "Listen, we're going to have lunch. I got everything, but I'm going to leave. I need you guys, customer to customer, to talk face to face about the good, the bad, what's worked well, what you wish you had." And at the end of the day, all my deals closed because of that. So that is a key.
I love that. So there's a couple of things I want to point out. First of all, what you just said, that whole idea of the transparency and look, I'm going to introduce and you guys talk. And so it's clear you're not orchestrating anything in that moment, which is great. But I know that there are people watching this who have a question, and that is when you got the second offer, and because you said, "Okay, that's a lot more than I'm making now." Did you think that to yourself, or did you say that out loud?
No, you never let them.
I was going to say, 'cause the way it sounded like you said it out loud, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, that."
No. I was thinking to myself, wow, that's like 40,000 more in a base salary than I was making. And I was running around 6 figures anyway. So I'm like, yeah, this is a definite change. So what I did is I gave him that 2 weeks notice again. It said, "Hey, I'm going to be moving on," which I did. And then that company saw me at a trade show one day with the bigger company and he wasn't too happy. But, at the end of the day, he made his money off of me and made his money off of the customers. And I moved on to a larger role with a team underneath me and just grew that company from like 12 million to about 60 in about 4 years in a very services industry, which is really difficult to do in services because you only have X amount of bodies that can do the work. So you're constantly always having to hire for them.
And I really like what you said there, Art, about about trust, where that client was at one company, you work with them for 5 years, and then you went to another company and moved them over. And pretty clever to do it in the middle of the night, right? Where there's no hiccup, because it does two things. There's not the shock to the team on the ground when they come in like, oh, okay, we're changing to a new system. Then they're like, oh, geez, it's going to be a shitty week. That's not good, right? So good job on that front. But the other thing I liked, and Rob touched on it too, when you do reference calls, this is one thing that, and I never actually did this in my career. I had a company I worked for that did it, but I know there's companies out there that when there's a reference call, you have the sales person on the call, you have the VP of sales on the call, and the client. Well, those clients can't, in my opinion, it's kind of like you're hiding something, right? Because why do you have to have those people on? And to that point, what I would do in my career, just because every great sales exec that I've worked with is an absolute control freak, because there's so many things that are out of your control in a sales situation. What I would do is I'd say, okay, we're having a call, tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'll start the call, make sure you're both on. Once both of you are on, I'm out. I drop off, right? And it's a meeting where it's online, just because today, right, with everything being online and Zoom in many cases, and a customer may not be in the same locale, right? In those scenarios, you get on the Zoom call, get that call started, and drop out, and they'll see, Nate Teske's no longer on the call. So that's a really key thing, because in my opinion, if you have to have a salesperson or somebody from that company on that is actually offering the service, my gut is, okay, there's something stinky here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Nate, I just did that last week with a very large client. I'm glad you brought that up. That was my mantra. Even when teams started, I would say, Rob Sullivan from XYZ Hospital, I want you to meet our great customer we worked with for years, that can tell you the great, the bad, what needs to be worked on. And this is where I started off, because nothing's perfect. We all know this. Anybody says, oh, these guys are perfect, number one, you're lying, because nothing is 100% perfect. Right. But if you strive for perfection and you're always hitting the little bumps in the road and you're able to take care and address them. So I'd say, Nate, this is Nate. He's our great customer. You guys are both on. I just want to make sure you connected. This way I know that you're not leaving voicemails or emails. So then I hit leave meeting. Then my guy, Nate, who I've sent probably 8 bottles of Blanton's bourbon to, or some filet mignon to his house, which is who I am, would then hit me up. What was that?
Do you have my address, by the way?
Rob will give it to me after this meeting. Do you prefer Wagyu or Kobe? I don't know. But at the end of the day, guys, what it was this. Nate would then go, here's what they do. And as soon as that meeting is done, Nate hits me up. Hey, they love this. They love that. They were asking about this. I told them this is what you're doing. So in the back of my mind, to move that sale forward, I can reach back out and say, hey, kind of curious, how'd that call with Nate Teske go? It did. What would you like about it? Did great. Was there anything that came up that you didn't like or you want some more clarification on? And they'll tell you. They'll say, yeah, Nate was saying they're looking at doing this, and that's what we're really looking to do right now. How are you guys going to address that? And then you're like, great. You know what? From a clinical side, I'm going to bring my subject matter expert on to let them tell you, because it's a clinical sale that I'm involved in. And then they'll say, okay, and let them two work it out. And 9 times out of 10, you get the deal because they feel comfortable knowing that a clinical person's coming on, not a sales guy, right? Because everybody loves talking to a sales guy, said nobody ever. So that's so true.
It's interesting too what you just talked about. One of the guests that Rob and I interviewed a couple of weeks ago, his name's Mark Reed, one of my old VPs. He had a great point. He said, when you are positioning things to a customer, there are things that are going to be issues, gaps, things the client's going to want you can't do for whatever reason. He said, so what we would do in his role in his career of sales, he'd say, okay, look, like you said, we're not perfect. We're not 100% all things to everybody. Here's what we don't do, and here's why. He would bring up and I wouldn't call it an objection. He'd bring up the shortfall, and it was a beautiful thing that he did, because he said, you have a bunch of other things that you can't do, right? The client may want to do whatever. But the one that that's not going to kill your deal, put it out there. Because when you do, they're like, okay, this guy's being straightforward. He's not trying to, BS me type thing. He goes, the other stuff you can't do, in many cases, they don't really think about it, right? Because they're like, hey, Mark told me, blah, 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 they can't do, and here's why. So it also, like you said, Art, people buy from people. You can't bullcrap people. I mean, the one thing I can guarantee you of, salespeople can smell it very, very quickly. And in your gut, if you're BSing something, client's going to sniff it out. They just do. Because they're already on high alert because you're a salesperson who they don't trust, right? And one of my old customers, I'll never forget this. He was an older fella. He said his comment was trust but verify. And I have another buddy who's a financial guy. He said, well, I'm the opposite. He goes, I verify, then I trust. So he took it to an even further extreme. So it was kind of interesting because you have to be straightforward, and you can't BS your way through a sales cycle, right? It just, clients are going to sniff it out, and in your gut, you can tell when you're not being straightforward, right?
Well, you sold tech before there was really the internet, right?
Yeah.
There's not access to all that information that people have nowadays. So
Correct.
nowadays, these folks are very well versed, and they'll take it to a point, especially since the key buzzword today in today's world is AI, right? When a company says they use AI, they go, okay, how do you use it? And you better know how you use it if
Yeah.
you want to be effective. In a clinical setting, we use AI, right? But we don't use it to diagnose, okay? We use it to stratify patient risk in healthcare. So that's the difference. Because if someone says, yeah, we use AI, there's liability involved with giving a diagnosis. So a doctor says, yeah, we're just going to go with this. There's lawsuits ready to be had. But if you use it to stratify patients' risk and show them the benefits of it, that's when they know, okay, this guy knows what he's using AI for. But everybody just uses that word now.
Mhm.
I was at a tech conference in Vegas 2 weeks ago. Every single booth had AI, 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 AI. So I, being myself, been doing this for years. I would walk up to the booth. Tell me how you use AI. Well, we've got AI. All right, this guy should buy a dog, name it Clue, and then he'll finally have one, right? So at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, okay, you don't use AI. But no, getting back to that, you guys have been doing it for years also. And Rob, you teach, you're a coach. You coach folks that, the young folks that are coming out of school, or even seasoned young folks that are looking to really take the next level in their sales career. It's all about the personal connection, guys. People buy from people. We always say that, and people think that's a generic term, but go buy something yourself and then go see the guy that's trying to sell you. And then go see another person that maybe that has the same product, and then listen to their terms and the words, the way they may try to close you. The latest thing I hate, I'm a soft closer. That's probably the best way I do it because I know the whole deal process. And at the end, when I say, hey, we've covered it all, what are next steps? What would you like to see happen here? You ask questions like that, right? And if they're able to say, well, I think, we're already past the proposal stage and we're already at the reference stage. Can you give us a contract? Sure, we'll put one together for you next week. All the terms that we agreed upon will be in there. And then you send it off to them. And then, as we know, legal takes a very long time. You don't ever have to ask the questions, cheesy sales questions, because people nowadays have heard them for years, even before I started in this industry.
Yeah. So I want to go back because you're obviously very strategic in your approach. And you mentioned the clinical, and you mentioned that as being one of the three things that you focus on as you're making the sale. Talk more about that part.
Well, in my world where I work in, there's three areas that we focus on: clinical, operational, and financial. Clinically, is it going to be effective for our patients? Are patients going to accept this? Is it going to drive better clinical outcomes? Operationally, is there going to be a heavy lift on our team to be able to incorporate this? Kind of like EHRs nowadays, an Epic or an Oracle of the world. Those are a large undertaking by their IT team, so their resources are spread thin. So the CFO will say, well, operationally, how's this going to affect us? Am I going to lose production on the back end bringing this up? And then financially, since you're working with the chief financial officer and the finance team, you have to show an ROI. We actually do a pro forma to show them, here's based on what we've worked with for systems your size, this is the expected return on investment you can expect. So we call it the COF, clinical, operational, financial, and it helps drive those engagements even further because they see and they understand, these guys do get what I have to deal with every day. So clinically, operationally, financially, these are the three things I work in my life with here at this building. So yeah, they're going to help hit me with these three areas that I need, and they're going to show me. And once you tell somebody something, here's something that salespeople forget to do. If I tell you something, you better deliver, okay? you better deliver on it, because don't just rub people's ears with peppermint and give them ear candy and make them feel good. People are going to hold you to it. So you better drive exactly what you say it's going to do. And that's how I've been able to build those relationships for years, because I will say this, and I've said this many times. And the first time I said it, my boss goes, what? What'd you say that for? And then you watch the client's reaction when you say, hey, I don't know if we're a fit for you guys, but I just have a few questions, if you don't mind me asking. And then you go through them and they bring something up. And I think, Robin, Nate, you brought this up. If a customer you can't do something, right? If there's something you cannot do and oh, man, can't do that, I will say, is that a deal maker or breaker? Because if it is, I don't want to go down the road with you and at the end, it come up again, and then we just walk together down the next 5 months of meetings, and then all of a sudden, I can't do it, and you say, well, this deal's gone, we're going to have to go to somebody else. And sometimes they'll say, yes, we need that. And that'll be a prelude into my next success sales that I had. No, that's actually in my lost one, okay? But at the end of the day, if you say, hey, we can't do that, I'd rather shake your hand now today, because, at the end of the day, you're going to see it doesn't do that, right? If they start using it. And then they're going to come back to you. You're the face person. You're the first point of contact when you walk into an office or a building. So what I always do is, hey, is this something as a deal maker or breaker? And if they say, yes, it is, I just say, hey, listen, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I have a lot of other customers we work with. Here's my card. If it changes in the future, I would love for you to have an opportunity, but I would just rather be upfront with you and say, no, we cannot do that. And you know what? 70 to 75% of the time, I received a call from those folks within 9 to 12 months because the other company promised them and they implemented it. And they said, wait a minute, that's not the way it works. And they'll tear it out. And I get the phone call, right? But then my price just suddenly went up. You know what I mean? It just happens, But at the end of the day, we're all here to help solve problems. That's all I tell my sales team. That's all I do myself. I just try to help solve a problem. I'm not a pushy salesperson. I love conversation. I love connecting with folks. My LinkedIn is very active on weekends. I have a lot of action on weekends, especially at night in front of the TV, because guess what? They're at home with their families watching TV, doing the same thing I'm doing. So that's another way. But I'll bring up one more win for you guys, because I think this will be funny, especially pertaining to today's society. There's a massive health system I was working with, and they were using a big competitive product service, did a cold call. Did you hear that, everybody? A phone cold call, okay? Old school. It still works, okay? It still works. Not everybody uses emails or texts or funny emojis. Some of us still use the phone. Picked up the phone, got a hold of the guy and said, hey, I don't know if you guys are experiencing this problem, but we just helped solve this for another company down the road. Don't know if you had a few minutes to connect. And the guy goes, yeah, actually, we're having problems right now. I don't know how you knew this, but we did. It just happened to be on a whim I called. So we got them down the line. It was us and 3 companies. They always have to vet 3 companies, okay? It was us and 2 other companies, but their existing company too, and they were getting rid of them. So us and 3 companies. The deal was $1.85 million for 5 years. So over a $9 million deal. They decided, all right, we need to talk to you guys. We need your references. 3 references, no problem. All 3 of them are the same people I use all the time. Massive health system leaders. They had a great conversation. They told us it's us and another company now. I'm like, you know what? I said, we're doing these meetings, and this is in California, and I'm in Florida, okay? This is in California. I said, you know what? We do these meetings all the time on Teams. I like to sit knee to knee in a room, maybe break bread afterwards, look you eye to eye, shake your hand. Is there a way we can come out on site to have the meeting? He goes, and this is right after COVID. He goes, that would be great. We'd love to meet our partners. We flew out there, had an awesome meeting, had lunch with them. Just a great time, got to know them, where their kids went to school, where they came from, what they like, what sports they like. Just a lot of great interaction. We got back, sent them a follow-up. Now I have a meeting recap that I send out after every single meeting. It recaps the entire meeting in bullet points, just the highlights. You don't need a 75-pager because no one's going to read it. You just have 4 or 5 salient points to say, hey, no, we covered this. These are some of the areas you'd like to have addressed. Boom, 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 boom. Great meeting you face to face. Looking forward to next steps. We found out, we've ran this before. Our success rate of closing when you get on site is 75%. We closed many, many deals by getting on site. Why? They know you're taking the time. You're face to face with them. You can read their body language a lot better. You can't really read language on a Teams call or a Zoom call. So you're across from them. You're listening to them. You're at lunch with them, hearing what's important to them. So they told us this, and my team and I were laughing when we heard this. They said, the reason why is I finally asked, are we at the final stage? Is this it? And they said, we're going to go with you guys. And we're like, great. Can I ask you something? He goes, sure. What made you choose us over the other company? Right? What was it? I'm kind of curious. I know Art's great, but it wasn't all about Art. And he starts laughing. He goes, no, Art, no, man, you've been awesome to deal with. But the thing is that we noticed you came on site, the other company didn't. And that right there, a customer knows that's a partner. They came all across the country. They sat down with us. We had a great meeting. We brought our clinical leaders in, and they were just like really impressed. I drove the meeting. I dictated the whole meeting, but I would turn it over to my subject matter folks because I don't speak clinical. I've got clinical folks that are clinical. I got technical folks that are technical. That's what they do. I facilitate. I'm basically Pat Sajak, where I yell out the letters and they turn them for me. And that's how I look at it, right? They're the doers. So at the end of the day, we won that deal, and great partnership, 21 hospitals. I mean, we blew it out. It was such a great experience. So that was another win, I would say, Nate and Rob, that it's all about positioning yourself and then trying to get on site. That to me is more important than being on these team calls, because we all know if someone turns their screen off on a Teams call when you're selling them, you have a better chance of seeing God than selling them because they just lost interest, right? Yeah. They lost interest.
Well, I love that you bring that up because it's really fascinating if you think about it. Pre-COVID and pre-Zoom and Teams and all that kind of stuff, flying out to see a customer would be no big deal. Kind of the equivalent of a thank you note. Right. Thank you notes used to happen all the time. Now they're really rare because nobody ever gets anything. I mean, in fact, it's gotten to the point, I joked about it, but it's true that people now will like text to let somebody know that they're going to call. A phone call has become the modern day equivalent of stopping by somebody's house unannounced.
Yeah. True.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, those emails that you send to folks, or a thank you letter, or anything that just shows your gratitude for them taking time out to meet with you, goes a long way. Funny is, I bought an Infinity back in the Chicago area in Westmont. This guy knows I moved to Florida 5 years ago, but he's still sending me birthday cards, still sending me, hey, if you ever back up here, would love for you to come. You know what? Most people maybe see that as a pain or this guy, but I look at it as, this guy may think one day I may get transferred back up north and I need a car. And I'll say, this guy's kept in touch with me. I'll come in and see this guy. So he knows the psychological aspect of a buyer, right? Like, he's not being a pain to me. He's just, hey, Art, happy birthday, buddy. Hope you're well. And I was like, oh, wow, there's a guy I didn't expect a birthday wish from this year, right? My car guy. So, yeah. And then finally, Nate, you asked me earlier, and this is the one deal. It was a whale. It was a loss. So this is where you learn in your sales process, everybody. This is where you really have a better understanding of where you are in the professional world when you can take a loss, but you learn from the loss. And that's where I have learned in my career. I've learned more on my losses than I have on all my wins.
Sure.
And then I ask questions when I lose a deal, and I'll go through this deal in a second, but some of the questions I'll ask was, hey, Mr. Customer or Miss Customer, I know you chose the other company and they're a good company, but I'm kind of curious, what was it that separated us between them? I said, because the only reason why I'm asking you is I'll face them again in the future. And I want to know, is there something I did? Is there something I said? Is there something that we do or don't do that they do or don't do? Is there something you can help me really understand? And, if you've got that rapport, remember this, we're going back to this, people buy from people. If you got that rapport, they'll tell you, hey, yeah, they're able to do this and you can't. Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. That's good to know. I'll have to, because I've always learned this years ago. You sell what you have and you sell against what you don't have. So in this meeting right here, this deal that I'm going to talk about, a loss. It was a heck of a loss to take. Existing customer, legacy account that I took over from the other rep that had left the company, built a rapport with these people. They were just great to work with. Suburban Chicago hospital. Awesome, awesome folks. And we were the large player in the industry. And this is Nate, I know I'm speaking your terms. This is when the PC vendors started coming in. Rather than the big proprietary companies that everything had to go through them and every upgrade was $100,000. Okay? Everything. I mean, if they wanted more voice recording, the disc from what I was selling was already in there, and they would just unfence the disc and they would grow it, and we charge them $100,000. I mean, it was highway robbery back in the day. You didn't know it. You just like, oh my God, we're going to do a disc upgrade. My tech guy told me one time, yeah, we go in there and we just unloosen it, and they got more disc hours. I'm like, we charge them $100,000 for that, So when you're a young kid and you hear those numbers, just don't let numbers affect you. That's number one. It's a part of the deal, right? So I'm at this facility. They're good friends. We built everything up. We're at the presentation time. They had a video camera in the room with a red light. Ready to go, Art? And you're like, yep. We had a brand new Windows NT platform. And that's dating myself a little bit, but this is when Windows had open architecture with object-oriented databases, so you could really do a lot. Not like the old DOS system or CPROP, you're typing stuff in. So I'm doing the whole presentation. Everybody loved it, but there was one question they asked. Can your system do this? And I looked right at the camera and said, no, we are not able to do that today. That is on our product roadmap as we grow and expand and there's more customers on this platform, but not today. Okay. Finished the product demo, got done, shook some doctors' hands, a couple of my leaders' hands, and left. Called my leader, my champion, White Knight, whatever you want to call him. Called her up and said, hey, how do you think things went? She goes, they went well, very well, but you can't do that one thing. I said, is that one thing going to be a deal maker or breaker? She goes, well, the other company came in and she told me who they were. And they said they can do it. I said, I know the company doesn't have large enterprise healthcare systems out there. Do me a favor. Make sure when you do the reference, if you go on site, because back in the days, they used to go on site to see the product working and make sure they talk to the people that are the operators of the program and asking them questions. Make sure you see that working right, because they were on video camera and they presented it that way. So you have it on recording. She goes, oh yeah, we sure do. Well, they call us in. It was March 17th, St. Patty's Day, 1999. Why do I remember that day? Not because it was St. Patty's Day. It's because it's a day where a $590,000 deal, which you received at that time was close to 10%, a nice chunk for a young kid to win. And as I'm presenting, they asked us, can you drop your price? And I had my vice president in the room and another team member in the room. And they said, can you step out for a second? We want to discuss this. So they said, if you drop this down, what do you think? I said, I just want to keep them as a customer. Sometimes money's not the big issue here. I want to have them as a reference because they're a big name. And when people see you use big names, I'll make more money on the back end when they see that big logo. Okay, so they dropped it. They said, that's great. Well, we'll get back to you guys. We're like, all right, thought that was negotiation time. Well, as we're walking out, here comes the other company right behind us, walking right in front of us, because I knew the woman that worked there. And I was like, it's never good to be second in negotiation, guys. Just so you know, if you're second, if you're first, if you're second, you probably got the deal, because they went back in there and they dropped their shorts like nobody's business because they wanted the deal. And so they're the company that promised the feature. We were all equal, but this one feature. And I could talk about it, but we're on this call. But it was something that we had 6 months later. But to make a long story short, they won it. And so at that meeting, they granted them the agreement. My contact called me, and I was in the car heading south, heading back Chicago, back to where I live in the car. And She called me. She said, I just want to let you know, procurement, materials management, and the leadership team decided to go with them. I turned around and went right downtown Chicago, and I partied like it was 1999, because it really was 1999. And I partied hard, like really bad. I'd leave my car downtown and take a cab home. Put it that way. I was so upset. I called the next day. I called the leadership team and asked, was it that important of a feature? They go, oh yeah, they can do it. 6 months later, they went to install it. Couldn't do it. They sued the company. They sued them. They sued them. And then they called me, and my price just happened to go up really high. I mean, well, we need 10% off. Yeah, we played that route already. Since we've got so many of these people working and we have the feature that you want, you're going to have to pay for it. And so sometimes you take a loss like I did, and I drank my sorrows away that night and woke up the next morning like, oh, I have a headache, and plus I lost a big deal. I wonder if I'm going to have my job tomorrow. You start really putting things in perspective. But being a high producer, you always have to have your pipeline 4 to 5x in order to hit your numbers. And I always been a top producer, and I expect my sales team, I give them shortcuts. I show them the nuances and the ins and outs of how to be successful. Because as Nate and Rob, you guys have done this as well, and I know you guys both have. You've mentored young sales reps, and this is what this was all about. This is about teaching the younger bucks coming up in the sales profession world. One thing I'll just tell all the young bucks out there, buck and buckettes, don't lie. Just don't lie, okay? Don't lie. If you can't do it, just say, is that a deal maker or breaker? Because if it is, I can't do it. People appreciate honesty, and some people have told me, no, Art, it's not a deal maker or breaker. We just wanted to bust your balls and see if that's something you could do. I'm like, okay, no, we can't do that. And you keep it real. And people like that. That's all it is, right?